Hi everyone, Mrs. Kozak here. Welcome to video lesson 1.2 on the rhetorical situation. Let's get started. So today, this is the first of two videos about rhetorical situation. In particular, we're going to focus on the speaker. For this lesson, you're going to need both your guided note-taking sheet and your copy of the George W. Bush speech. If you don't have them, please pause the video and grab them. All right, let's get started. So we are focusing on the rhetorical situation and this big idea that individuals create within a particular situation and they make strategic choices that are based on that situation. In particular, we're focusing on AP Skill 1A, which is a close reading skill, and our ability to identify components of the rhetorical situation, in particular, the writer. So by the end of today's lessons, you should be able to define speaker and identify the speaker of a text. So when we talk about speaker and we look at this image, you'll notice that speaker is at the top in the center of this diagram. And that's because the speaker makes all of these choices based on the subject and their audience. And all those choices are made within the context of the situation. So our speaker is the creator or the author of a text. We're not going to use the term writer in this class. We're going to use speaker because we will also be analyzing visual text. So the speaker might be a cartoonist or a photographer or videographer. And really the speaker is the source who presents a perspective on a subject that's shaped by both their context and their own personal background. So what are some questions we need to consider when we're identifying a speaker? Who is the speaker? Are they an individual or a group? What's their name? Any titles that they hold, current or past? And any roles or qualifications they may have for speaking on this particular topic. Also, what persona is this individual speaking from? Are they speaking as an individual person sharing their personal views? Or are they speaking on behalf of a country, a political party, a company, or an organization? How do we identify a speaker? On the AP exam prompt, you will be given a background paragraph. It's usually only about 3 to 4 sentences long before you get to the task that tells you to read a passage carefully. Then in a well-written essay, analyze rhetorical choices Gandhi makes to present his case to Lord Irwin. We see up here Mohandas Mahatma Gandhi, Gandhi. His name appears 3 times. Our speaker is Gandhi. And so the speaker's name will often appear in that task that you're given. Pay close attention to the background paragraph. If you are listening to a speech, listen very carefully at the beginning. You may not be familiar with an individual, but they will probably give you some clues as to who they are. They will introduce themselves or introduce their qualifications. When you have a written text, again, look closely at that beginning. Here we see Malala Day is not my day. I'm just one of them. So here I stand, one girl among many. We know our speaker is a girl and she's using first person, I, my, Malala. Our speaker's Malala. So use the text to help you identify the speaker. If you have an article, an op-ed piece in a newspaper, an essay, look underneath the title and try to identify a name. So this is called the byline. It's by Adair Campuzano. From the Star Tribune, so our speaker is Adair Campuzano. If you have a political cartoon, look for a name somewhere in the illustration. It might be in a lower right corner. For some of them, it may appear along the left side. You can also look for a caption underneath the image. Guy Parsons, Kegel Cartoons Incorporated. For a photograph, especially in a newspaper or a news source, look for captions underneath. Seth Harrison, The Journal News, USA Today Network. Now, why are 3 things included here? That's because Seth Harrison, an individual, is not taking this photograph. He is doing what's called work for hire. His work is owned by the Journal News, which is part of the USA Today Network. And so when we identify the speaker here, we want to make sure that we include all of this information. When you have a letter, look at the signature at the bottom of the letter or a signature block. A signature block will include a name, a title. It may include some additional information to help you identify who the speaker is. This particular one, to give us clues about who this George is, we can see it's coming from the White House, January 20th, 1993, and it's addressed to Dear Bill. You will be our president. I wish you well. So this is outgoing President George H.W. Bush, who's writing a letter to incoming President Bill Clinton. Here we have a social media post. This is a tweet from the White House. It's not the White House, the building, that is sharing information about President Biden at the NATO summit. This is the organization working within the White House. And so if there are one or two people who are part of the social media team who are responsible for sending out these tweets, they're not writing as individuals. They are writing as an organization, the White House. And so we would identify the White House as our speaker here. All right, now it's your turn to identify the speaker. Look closely at this image. This is an actual campaign mailer from the 2020 election. In the question that follows, please identify the speaker. All right, so who did you pick as the speaker? Did you identify it as Donald Trump? If so, you're wrong. Notice here, paid for by the Republican, whoops, let me go back to that. It's paid for by the Republican Party of Minnesota. So the Republican Party of Minnesota, that group or organization, is the speaker for this particular text. So grab your copy of the speech and let's practice annotating. We're going to annotate this background paragraph and we're going to look for a name. And so as you look at this, you will notice that the speaker is President George W. Bush. So I'm going to underline it and I'm going to label it with an S so that I know that our speaker is President George W. Bush. So that's it for today's lesson. In the next lesson, we'll go a little deeper into how we describe the speaker of a text. But for right now, I'm going to ask you to go on and practice identifying the speaker.